Welcome to Steps to Health. My name is Kent Lowry, and I am your host today. And today we will begin the third area of focus out of 4 total programs for the year. This series we are beginning today is mental wellness. In our first segment, Belinda Lowry, a certified professional life coach, will help us tackle procrastination. If this is an issue you struggle with, you will want some paper and a pen to take down some notes. And also, in case you have some questions, we would love to hear from you. We will want you to note this email address, stepstohealth, Chewelah. Little technical difficulty there. So that also, in case you have some questions, we want you to note this email address. We're very interested in your questions. The email is stepstohealthchewelah@gmail.com. I'm going to spell Chewelah. That's Chewellah. stepstohealthchewelah@gmail.com. You may also use the chat in Zoom or on YouTube. So without any further delay, here is Belinda Lowry.
You just took my talk. This is live, folks. Just in case you didn't know that, you're wondering why things might not be edited out, because this is live and our participants are live. So anybody viewing this later, you just know that a lot of us are learning these things brand new post-COVID. We are going to talk about procrastination, and I'm going to start with a definition. Procrastination is the behavior of putting off tasks that require effort and expose us to realms outside of our comfort zone. It is very rewarding behavior, especially when the task is associated with feelings of anxiety. Now, in our liberated society, procrastination, like any form of irrational avoidance, has become the oppressor of our own free will and our aspirations. We are clearly aware of the risks of delay, but yet the inhibitions that we have, our motivation is just not there to complete the task. To help us understand what this looks like, you all have seen flow charts, right? You've got like this big, huge box, and on one side, there's a little dialogue box. In that box, it says, do something right now. Then we have this little arrow, and it goes to a word, and what do you think that word might be? The procrastinators that are listening already know the word. No. That's it. That's the end of the flow chart for procrastination. Do something now? No. It's all over with. But we are going to be giving you some tools and some tips today. Now, I personally didn't realize how much of a master procrastinator I was until one day I saw a t-shirt online. And the t-shirt said, "Sorry I'm late. I didn't really want to come." That hit me really hard, and I began to question my procrastination sessions to find out, did I not really want to do this? In some places, the answer was yes. I didn't really want to do the thing that I was late for, but in other places, the answer was no. I very much wanted to do that. And so that put me on a journey of self-discovery and being able to realize, why do I procrastinate? There's a lot of reasons, and we're going to get into those today, why someone might procrastinate. But here's what's important. We have to understand our reason that we're procrastinating before we can apply the tool that's going to get us past that procrastination into activity and action. So if you have pre-registered If you haven't, I encourage you to do so at that email address. But if you have pre-registered, you have a little handout. I'm going to show you what that handout looks like. It is titled Steps to Health Procrastination, and you're going to see an outline. I'm not sure if you can see that on there, but this is just so you can kind of recognize it in your packet. You would have gotten 5 different things, and that's one of them. Because we are going to jump into the causes of procrastination, and hopefully you will be able to recognize some of your reasons for procrastinating. The first reason we're going to talk about, and these are not in any particular order, so wherever it is for you, put it in that order on your paper for yourself. But the first one is the acceptance of another's goals or lack of relevance. Basically, the thing that you're needing to do, it's not yours. It's really not likely important to you. And when that happens, when somebody else said, hey, do such and such, but you didn't really want to do it, that's like that t-shirt, sorry I'm late, I didn't really want to come. That's one of the reasons why people procrastinate. They put off what they didn't really want to do. It was somebody else's idea. Now the second one, and this causes a lot of problems for many of us, and that's perfectionism. We're afraid to start something for fear that it's not going to turn out perfectly. And this is an internal standard that we set for ourselves, because what one person thinks is perfect, another one might not, especially for themselves. So perfectionism makes it to where we don't start certain things because we're like, I'm not going to do this now because I won't be able to get it perfect. The third reason is anxiety over what others think. Now that is related to the first one, but it's an external standard now instead of an internal standard. We're afraid that others will think less of us if they see our results and go, wow, that wasn't very good. So that might be a reason why we don't do something, is we're afraid of what somebody else is going to think. Now, the fourth reason is the fear of the unknown. Maybe you're afraid to try something that you've never done before. And you know what? That's normal. It intimidates us to do something we don't know anything about, but it doesn't have to set us back. So that's the fear of the unknown. The fifth thing is thinking that we do not have the skills. Now, the procrastinator would rather that others think he lacks effort than to think he lacks ability. Think about that. The procrastinator would rather have others think that he just lacks the effort or the time or the opportunity than to think that he lacks the ability. So that can really hold us back. You know, often we desire to preserve a sense of self-worth, and that hinges on the expectations of others. And this leads to the continuous delays of just never really starting something. Now, I want you to notice that 2 through 5, those are all causes that are fear-based. So we're dealing with fear here. Now, let's continue on the list. And the 6th thing is ambiguity. That is when you're unsure about the assignment or the task. You're not really clear on what it is you're supposed to be accomplishing. That can cause procrastination, and understandably so. But when that happens, fear can start to come back, right? Because if I ask, then I'm going to look incompetent, and so on and so forth. But simply not understanding the scope of what you're being expected to do, that's kind of one of those issues. Now, the 7th thing on the list is that the tasks are too big. That overwhelms us, right? A large task can seem very overwhelming, and especially for people who are very busy. It's like, where am I going to fit the time to do this huge thing? Nope, can't do it today. Can't do it this week. Can't do it next month. That's what ends up happening with tasks that are bigger. They have bigger rewards too, though, so don't say that you're never going to do a big task. We'll get to what you can do with that. The other thing is low tolerance or frustration level for unpleasant tasks. We sometimes will put off the things that we don't really enjoy. It doesn't thrill us, it's boring, it's not fun, we don't want to do it. So it's like, nah, I just have no tolerance for doing such mundane things. That could be a reason why you're procrastinating something that you know you need to get done. The ninth thing on this list is overconfidence in your skills. And you might think, what? That's a weird reason for procrastinating, but here's what happens. If you're overconfident in your skills, you say to yourself, you know what? It won't take very long to just blow this out. I don't need very much time at all because so many things come easily to me. I'm sure I'm just going to get that and I'll be able to do it in the last little time on the clock. That is a reason why some procrastinate. Those people tend to be high achievers, but not always. That's not always the case. Now, the last cause on this list, and this certainly is not an exhaustive list, but the last cause is that you're the nice procrastinator. The nice procrastinator wants to be liked, and they can't really say no to others. And because of that, you neglect your own priorities. You were going to exercise, but somebody called and said, hey, could you do such and such for me? So you procrastinate the thing that you were going to do, is because you're wanting to be nice. Now later, we're going to talk about obligers. Some of you may have heard that term before, and we will see how that relates to successful habits a little bit later in today's program. Now, there is a lot of possible causes for procrastination here. And like I said, I haven't covered all of them. But did any of these things seem to make sense to you? I want to ask you a question. Did any of these things on that list address time illiteracy, time management? Think about that. Do any of these things, any of these causes address time management? If you look at the list, you'll see that the overconfidence in skills is really the only thing on that list that addresses time management. Now, if we think about that, all the things that tell us, well, you need to manage your time, that's all you have to do to end procrastination. Is that true? No, because if you're afraid of something, if you don't know how to do something, if you're absolutely bored with something because it's not yours, it's not a time management issue. And most of us know how to set timers and schedule things and so on and so forth. Procrastination is not a time management. And as long as you're trying to fix procrastination with time management skills, you're going to struggle and you're going to get frustrated because you're not dealing with the actual cause. Now, in light of the cause, let's think about a few other things. Procrastination can be overcome by managing our emotions, our stress levels, our stinking thinking, rather than struggling with managing our time. And we're going to be covering stress and stinking thinking in some upcoming sessions from this program. So you will want to attend all of these to get the full picture. Now, if you related to some of the things on this list, you're probably saying, oh no, I'm a procrastinator. Let us know in the chat if that list was helpful to you. We're doing these so that we can be helpful to the community, and let us know, was that list helpful? Now, I want to calm your fears just a little bit. Supposedly 20% of the population are chronic procrastinators, which means if you've procrastinated at some point, you're not necessarily a chronic procrastinator. You don't need to own that label. But you do need to realize that even though we might not be among the chronic procrastinators, and we've experienced some of those things, it's normal to occasionally have that experience. However, you work through it. What's not normal is for this behavior to cripple your life and steal your potential. So we want to consider that procrastination is a setback, and what it does is it sets back our goals, It sets back our time, right? Because when we procrastinate, we're going to be honest here, we don't typically go do something super productive. Sometimes, some people do, us high achievers here today, and we'll talk about that. We do stay busy, but we're still procrastinating, and then our time is stolen from the thing that we need to do. So procrastination is a setback. And once we identify what's blocking our motivation for getting something done, then we can find that solution to overcome that setback. Are we ready to consider some solutions to procrastination? Here's the first one. If you really did not want to do it, it was somebody else's should, you need to consider that first. Perhaps you can delegate it to someone else. Now, when I say that, I'm saying do that reasonably. Don't just dump it in someone else's lap. But what's better is if you have to do it, learn from that experience and recognize before you say yes to something in the future, you have to consider, is this something I really wanted to take up, or am I just being the nice procrastinator? This is an important key. You're going to want to write this down. Put it on your bathroom mirror if you have to. Put it on your desk in your office. Every time that we say yes, somewhere else we're saying no. Whether that's to ourselves, to our family, our spouses, at work. Every yes, we have to consider what's going to become a no. And once we do that, here's what's really important. The less our plate is filled with disagreeable tasks of someone else's devisings, the less you have need to escape and procrastinate. That's a game changer, folks. When you don't have things that you're procrastinating away from, you've solved that if that's your cause. All right, now let's get into the other things that we want to do, as well as those things that we have to do, because yes, we do have to do some things that aren't all fun and games, right? So the first one is to notice your self-talk. Determine what fears you may have about completing the task, whether it's being punctual, what your skill level is. Notice what you're saying to yourself and write it down, because we're going to change that. One example is I must be perfect, right? That was one of the causes. Perfectionism is a ridiculous standard, and you can say, I will get started and do my best. Now here's another example. Everything I do should go easily and without effort. Do you think that's going to cause frustration when you tackle something new? Of course. But you could say, life is full of unpleasant necessities, and I need to learn to do them to reach my goals. I'll work on it for 15 minutes. Now, you may be familiar with this little exercise. There's several other examples, but we're going to go much deeper into this tool with the Stinkin' Thinkin' presentation that'll be coming later on in our series. The next thing you can use as a solution is to give up that perfectionism. Try to do a decent job to begin with, and then know and accept that it's going to improve later. You won't get improvement if you don't step out and do it. Perfect can be the enemy of good. Does that mean we don't try our very best? No, that's not what it means. But if perfectionism is holding you back from trying something, perfection is the enemy of good, and now you've got nothing that you've accomplished. Nothing good, nothing perfect, and you won't have if that's what you're adopting. Another thing is to put up several reminders to complete the task. This helps for some people, especially those that might be highly distracted and forget what they had intended to do. So you can put something on the bathroom mirror, your appointment book, a bulletin board. Leave yourself a phone message. Find a way that you have a reminder so that you're like, yes, this is what I want to do. There was a little sign one time that I found, and I just stared at it for a long time while I was procrastinating. And the person is holding a rope in their hand, and they say, I don't know if I lost my horse or found a rope. Because we get ourselves going in such a whirlwind, and we forget what it is we're trying to do. Now, here's a tool that can work in nearly every procrastination session that you find yourself in. Trick yourself into starting the task. Now, the reason I say trick yourself is because your brain learns that you view something as bad, and your brain is going to help you not do bad things. This is how we train ourselves. This is a cognitive behavioral method, and it's called the 5% method. And you can use this in just about any situation, like I said. Whenever you realize that you're about to procrastinate, you want to engage in the following self-speak. Okay, I will do the complete task later, but right now, I'm just going to do 5%. Now, when you follow that self-negotiation process, the negative feelings associated with performing the task will be reduced because your mind will be assured that it will not have to deal with the whole entire thing. And it gives us a similar effect to the procrastination. It brings us some relief. The brain says, oh, okay, I can put it off, but I'm only going to do 5% of it, right? So the brain is like, okay, we can do this. Now, you're going to do that 5%, and you're going to be able to relax the cognitive restructuring that's highly believable in the brain to be able to say, okay, we can do this. And from that, you're going to be exposed in a way which demonstrates the irrationality of the procrastination. Because once you get started, you're like, why did I put this off so long? That 5% is going to show you that. Now, I want to stress that the 5% is not special, it's not magical. It's perceived as being small enough that the brain doesn't fight you on it, right? And it's small enough that you don't build anxiety over it. You're like, yeah, 5%. We can do 5% because whatever the 5% looks like, it's okay, it's not finished. And then you can go forward. And you think, well, okay, 5%, where do I stop? You stop where you're ready to stop. And like a wise grandmother used to say that with food comes appetite. And with doing actions comes the motivation to do more. Now, there are several things in this list, and I am not going to be able to cover every single one of them, but I'm going to hit a few highlights. So just follow along with your handout. As I was talking about how action brings more action, point 7 is that typically you can learn that your fears are unwarranted, and you think, how does action prevent procrastination? If I could get up and do the action, wouldn't I have already done it, and I wouldn't be a procrastinator? Yes, but you need to think about it in this way. Number 1, when you get something completed, it relaxes the overwhelm of the brain, which is sometimes what's holding us back. The second thing is that feeling of satisfaction that you've completed something brings motivation to do more, as I was already saying. And the third thing, and this is why it's important to consistently do these things in your life, action repeated creates new habits of doing instead of delaying. So every time you're going to do that 5%, you are building within you a habit of doing instead of delaying. And over time, it builds experience on how to tackle the bigger things. I'm going to back us up just one to point 6 because I really thought that 7 belonged with 4. But point 6 is to divide large tasks into smaller steps that can be completed in about 15 minutes. When you divide a big project into a smaller action step, you make a list of each step and you cross them off, but you're only dealing with that small little piece. And so then it's not so overwhelming and you're not doing it all at once. We kind of talked about that a little bit. Now we're going to jump down to number 9 on your handout. That's the buddy system. Check with somebody to be accountable or work on a project with a partner. If you do that, you've got deadlines because you're agreeing to do this with somebody. You've got the accountability. And later today, we're going to be talking about the 4 tendencies, which is a framework that relates to how we meet inner and outer expectations. So if you're struggling, get a partner, get a buddy. It really will make a huge difference. most self-help books of do this and accomplish this and get that done is based on what's called the upholder tendency. So the person who's the obliger that I mentioned earlier is going to get kind of stuck. Another thing to share, point 10, is do it now. And you might think, do it now. That's kind of like what you were already saying. The do it now is if something takes 3 to 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, just do it right then. And the reason why is because if you don't, your brain keeps a list of all these things that you need to do. And it's always yelling at you. When you walk by and you see something stacked that would take less than 5 minutes to deal with, your brain says, oh yeah, we need to do that. In the subconscious, it's always yelling at you. And then you get more overwhelmed and more overwhelmed. So if there's anything you can do in less than 5 minutes, just do it. And now you don't have to put it on your to-do list. You don't have to think about it. And you won't feel guilty for not getting back to those emails or whatever it is you're not doing that you could do in 5 minutes. Now, we're going to jump ahead and look at a few more of these. You've got to recognize when you're procrastinating. That's number 14 on your list. Often we dawdle and doodle and daydream and otherwise just sidetrack ourselves. Becoming aware of your favorite procrastination tactic and being able to learn to catch yourself as soon as you begin to wander off is going to be really helpful. Now, I mentioned earlier about high achievers being busy but yet procrastinating. Have you heard anybody talk about being a procrasticlear or doing procrastibaking? I do procrasticrafting. The thing is that we can stay very busy doing things but not doing the things we have to do. And when that happens, we can get stuck. There's a book in your handout. There's more information about it. It's titled Finish. That was hugely helpful to me to see some of the things that I was doing as a master procrastinator and staying busy but yet not getting the most important things done. So I want to encourage you to check that out. You can listen to it from your library. You don't even have to buy it. Now, I'm going to jump down to point 18. Establish a routine. Procrastination often leads to disorganization. So if you don't know what you're doing next, like the thing with, did I find a rope or lose my horse? You have time to watch more cat videos, right? But in reality, you don't. If you have a routine and you have a schedule, you've got some order instead of chaos. And it's much easier to then say, okay, this item is going to fit right in here. And then at the end of the day, you don't say, what happened? All I did was watch cat videos. I didn't even get the laundry out of the washing machine or whatever it is. So establish a routine. That will be so helpful to you, especially as you're going to be trying some of these things. Now, you want to be able to set aside time for doing recreational activities. And you might think, wait a minute, I thought watching cat videos might have been recreational. Here's the thing. When we are working, the brain says, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And if you set aside healthy recreation, then your brain gets a reset, and when you come back, you actually can accomplish more. Now, I'm just going to add a little note that scrolling on screens does not give our brains the break that we crave. And in fact, it actually causes us more procrastination and lowers our motivation. We think that we're giving ourselves a little break by jumping on our phones or watching those cat videos. But it doesn't reset the mind. It actually bogs it down because you're taking in so much that your brain is now like, oh, I have to process 100 more things. The subconscious is doing that. So that's not going to give you a break. But if you want to learn a little bit more about the effect of social media and browsing and scrolling, in your handout, there is a link to Media on the Brain. Go watch the trailer on that so that you can be aware of some of the things that might be sabotaging your best intentions of getting things accomplished. Now, we only have a few more moments. I'm going to jump to 22 and 23, and I'm going to talk about those together. You do want to remind yourself of the consequences of procrastination, because if you don't recognize how it's setting you back and how it's hurting your best potential, you're going to say, it's not a big deal, I can keep doing it. So remind yourself of the consequences, but it's really important that you don't threaten yourself. And the reason why is it only makes it worse. Well, if I don't get this done, then this is going to happen. That doesn't address what's getting in the way. You want to address what's getting in the way and then begin with those positive action steps. And back to the rewards, make it tangible so that you can say, hey, I got this done. Don't wait until your goal is 100%, because then you're not counting any of the previous effort, even if there were 20 steps involved. So break it down, and when you've completed a phase, celebrate the victory, and then go again and go again, because your brain says, oh, I like this reward. I like the feeling of satisfaction. So reward those non-procrastinating behaviors. And when you do that, then you will be able to say, hey, look, I might only be 80% done, but guess what? I got 80% of it done as opposed to 0 because I never started. So count those victories. If you don't have the handout and you want it, it's not too late to register at the email, which is stepstohealth@chewelah@gmail.com. If you register, we'll be happy to send you those handouts, because we're going to be referring to various handouts throughout our program today. And now, if you have questions, start getting those ready.
If you have any questions, you can send those in now. And if you found that the information was helpful, that's awesome. It was helpful to me. I also wanted to mention to you that while you are sending in your questions, I will tell you about our next segment. Belinda will be sharing an activity that you can do on your own, and to find out what is behind your procrastination and what solutions can be applied to solve those problems. If you pre-register, the procrastination handout was in your confirmation email. If you did not pre-register but want to have an activity handout, let us know by emailing us at stepstohealth@chewelah@gmail.com, and we will get one to you as soon as we can. So, do we have any questions? I think we might have some questions. They're checking on that. If we have those questions, we will field those questions to Belinda. I don't think I got any emailed to me. Or texted. Nope. Okay, no questions. All right, Belinda is next.
All right, so we are going to go into our next segment. I don't know if I should be worried that there were no questions, but hopefully that means that it was clear. And it's never too late to email your questions if you didn't get to do it in the chat time, to be dealt with at a later point, okay? In your handout, you have a little chart-looking thing, and I'm going to show you that because I want you to find that. Yours is actually going to be blank. See if we can see that there. So there's a chart, and then there's questions on the back side. I want you to find that. That's a little worksheet for being able to brainstorm and figure out the things that are going on. If you've got that, go ahead and get it out right now, because I'm going to talk about the first portion of it before we have an example of what it looks like to work through the questions. In the top area, I realize I should have made a slide for this, and I do apologize. I know it's live, but if you've pre-registered, you've got this in front of you. You have a column over here, and I want you to put the areas, and then you have some things already written at the top. When you look at my example one, the first thing I had written is health. But the next thing that I wrote there is finances. And then the third one is household. Okay? Let me get my hands to where you can see. So if I want to make some changes with the household, I'm going to write down in that first column the things I want to stop. The second column, I'm going to write down what I want to do less of. In the third column, I'm going to write down what I want to keep doing. Let's acknowledge what's working, right? In the next column, it says do more. What do I want to do more of? I will write that down. And then in the final one, what is it that I need to start doing? Now, what I need you to understand about this section of this worksheet is that there are no hard, fast rules. This is, this is all about brainstorming. Get your brain going. Start thinking about the areas in your life. What do you want to do less of? What do you want to stop doing? What's working already? And what do you want to do more of? And what really needs to be started? So there are no wrong answers in these columns. This is your worksheet for you to kind of figure out what's going on. Because once you're able to do that, then you can say, hey, I want to work on X, Y, Z. And the next portion of this segment, we are going to have an example of two ladies who are going to role play the questions that we have on the back of this form in your packet, so you get a better idea of what this looks like. And that will start in just a moment.
Well, Hannah, you filled out this form, and you chose 3 categories. You chose health, finances, and household. Which one is it you want to tackle for this week?
Probably household. That one's always been the one that I'm always procrastinating on.
Well, what is it about household that causes you to procrastinate? What is it about getting your household organized? Why is that a procrastination issue for you?
Well, let's see here. It's something I know I need to start, and that's the creating an organizing system. And anytime I think about that, I just get overwhelmed by the task. It's such a big task, you know. And I'm also like afraid to invest the time in a system that doesn't really work for me.
Yes.
So I think those are the 2 major things that keep me
sounds very common.
procrastinating.
Yeah, it sounds like a very common thing. So what are 3 tools or solutions you might be able to use to help you in overcoming the procrastination? Have you thought about that?
So based on the list that that we went over with the procrastination causes and cures, I guess probably dividing the large tasks into smaller steps would probably be a good one. I liked the trick myself into. I
like that one too. Right.
into
that's
doing
good.
only 5%, and then
5%'s nothing.
Yeah.
Easy to do. Right. Yeah.
And I think if I had an accountability partner to just kind of hold me accountable, and also to just kind of bounce ideas off of, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Well, and then how have you thought about how you would pair this new behavior tool with what's in your keep doing column?
Let's see. So I want to keep doing my seasonal.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to keep doing my seasonal decorating for sure. So I guess, well, if we were going to divide the large tasks into small steps, I guess just first of all, I guess instead of trying to declutter or organize all of my seasonal decorations, in like one sitting, because that's, in my brain, that's the ideal, right? Just get it all done.
That's right. That's how we want to do it.
But
Just get
it's
it
been,
done.
20 years and it hasn't happened, right? So probably maybe as I'm, going through the seasons, I can declutter as I'm either taking the decorations down or putting them up, and making sure that the areas that they're displayed in are decluttered as well. And then just keep working on that until it's finally done.
Yeah, that sounds good. And another question, though, would be what could be a trigger for you to do or to stop doing the behavior that you want to change?
I guess when I notice that something doesn't have a home, I can come up with a plan for finding a home for it, or, if I decide I don't need it anymore, just if it doesn't spark joy or doesn't have like a sentimental value or anything like that, I could donate it. I get it out of the house, declutter, right? Yeah, and then I could put it in my plan as part of my steps, and then as they get done, and I get that 5% done, I can schedule the rest of it in there.
Okay. So why is this an important behavior for you to change, and what would be a consequence for you if the behavior isn't changed?
So it's important because it's so overwhelming. I don't like being home. When there's so much clutter, I just don't feel like I can relax ever, and it's just constantly there. And so I feel like if, being overwhelmed by all that, if I could get that under control, I would enjoy being home more. I wouldn't spend money on things that I often find, when I bring out my decorations, I have like 2 of these manger sets. How did that happen?
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. I can associate with that really well. So what do you think you could use or need to make this behavior change happen?
So I think I would need a notebook so I could write down different categories of all the items that I have, and then I can write down the plans, how I'm going to break it down into the steps. And then definitely let's see what else. Probably some calendar pages to organize my small steps.
Now, I have to ask, would it be a new habit for you to learn to write things down? Is that also a part of that just to even write things down? Are you used to just going down the road and getting things done without stopping to write?
Yeah, so I would have to definitely stop and make this intentional.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take, just as if now we're going to take that she's been doing this for a week, and so now I'm going to ask her some questions as if she has been doing this. So, Hannah, tell me, how did it go? And did you find a reward for yourself that you felt was appropriate and really encouraged you when you did this?
Well, so I actually got a lot of organization done.
Oh, wonderful. That's great.
And so did my friend. I had a friend, and we did it together. So we both got a lot accomplished. So that was good. And so I think as a reward, we were planning to get together and do some crafts and celebrate like that.
It sounds like it was mutually beneficial.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
Good. Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay. Well, we hope that you are able, from this role playing that we did, to use some of the things that Hannah mentioned that work for her, the 5%, the notebook, finding a friend to help, and maybe a reward of some sort. So anyway, thank you.
No questions? Okay, are there any questions about the activity we just had? So if so, let us know right now by either chat windows in Zoom or YouTube or by email at stepstohealthchewelah@gmail.com. Also, if you're wanting the activity handout and you have not let us know yet, please do so by emailing us. Our next segment will be on habit forming. Belinda will help us discover what methods will be more effective for us personally and how to start making lasting changes that we all need. Now let's take any questions from the activity of our first segment. And do we have any of those? If so, Belinda can field those questions. Otherwise, we will move on to our next presentation. We might have a question. Awesome. They're working on those questions. While they're working on those questions, I just thought I might add, it's been very helpful to learn these things. These will help us in our business life, family life, church life, and so on.
So there's no question? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Great. Got either some shy attendees, or I've overwhelmed you, or maybe you're just getting all of it and you're super happy to get started. Our last segment for today is on habit forming. Many of us say, yeah, I really need to do such and such, but we don't have a habit for it, and so it doesn't really happen. Are you tired of setting goals and not achieving them? The trick is to chip away at your goal in small incremental steps. In other words, when you know how to form the habit related to your goal, then you can turn success into a series of daily actions. And today's presentation can help you get there. We've taken the process of building habits and turned it into simple 8-step process that you can immediately implement. Again, in your handout, if you pre-registered, you would have gotten a little form that looks like this. Oops, I'm not very straight, sorry. It kind of looks like this, and that'll help you to follow along and see what some of these things are so that you can begin to think how that is going to look for you. So step 1 is to focus on one new habit. If you want to know how to form a new habit, the biggest topic you need to understand is called ego depletion. And you think, what? I'm not an egomaniac. No, ego has to do with self. That word is used in various ways, and usually in society it's very negative. But what ego depletion means is it's referring to a person's diminished capacity to regulate their thoughts, feelings, and actions. And when your plate gets very full, that's what happens. And for most of us, our plate is already full, and now we want to add in a new habit. So please focus on one new habit before you add in a second one. Now, this impacts our ability because our supply of willpower is spread out among all those areas in our life. And people say, well, you just need more willpower. Well, you might just need less things on your plate. And again, you might have to understand why you were procrastinating a habit that you're now wanting to create. So that's your first question, is what one new habit do you want to form? Identify it. You can use your sheet that we showed you earlier for the action brainstorming and learn everything that you can about that one thing so that you can do it right. Take the time. Learn about it. See how it works. If you're saying, I'm going to become a vegetarian, if you watched any of our early series, you saw reasons why you wanted to start an exercise program, why you wanted to drink more water, why you wanted to get more fruits and vegetables into your diet. These are all things that you might want to do. Take the time to learn about doing that the right way. It's well worth doing that. But once you've done that, you can say, hey, my 5% is done. I can move forward. But really, that's going to be more than 5%, honestly, because you're learning what you need to do when you identify that thing. So that the important point is to identify the habit that you can do all the time, something that's going to fit into your life and can be completed on a daily basis, even when you don't feel like it. So because of the ego depletion, it's important that you only work on the one habit. We're tempted to make a gazillion changes all at once. But when we do that, we get frustrated and we feel like a failure because our brains went, whoa, listen, I'm just trying to tie my shoes this morning, right? So one habit. The second thing in forming a new habit is to commit for a minimum of 30 days. Now, some people say it takes 21 days to create a new habit, and others have claimed that it takes up to 66 days. The truth is that the length can vary based on the habit that you're trying to begin, as well as the individual. So 30 days is a good time frame to say, I'm going to do this for 1 month. One of the things that can cause it to take longer is if it's not something you're doing every day. As an example, you want to exercise, but you realize you're only going to fit that in 3 times a week instead of every day. That will take longer to become a regular habit. So understand that and be realistic with yourself, okay? And commit to that specific habit for 30 days. Any of us can do something for 30 days, right? And then afterwards, we can add another thing more easily. So during that time, you're going to focus primarily on that new habit and creating space for it in your routine and your schedule. Now, the third thing, and this is a really powerful tool, is to anchor your new habit to an established habit. So a habit shouldn't be based on fleeting motivation, fads, or even temporary desire. Rather, it should be instilled in your life to the point that it becomes habitual. This often means that you don't need a sophisticated series of steps, just so that you can commit day in and day out forever. That's what we want to have done. So a great example of anchoring your new habit comes from author B.J. Fogg, and he calls this tiny habits concept. And what you want to do is to commit to a very small habit change and take some baby steps and build on that. It's as an important aspect. So here's how you would anchor something to what you already do. So you want to exercise. After I get to my car from work, I will change into my workout clothes and walk for 10 minutes. Another one is after brushing my teeth at night, I'll write down everything that I ate for the day. Or you could say, after I drop my children off at school, I'm going to head to the gym for an exercise class. So one of the things on your little brainstorming chart that you're going to keep doing, those are the items that you're going to anchor your new habit to. So when I do X, I will now start doing Z or Y, in between, whatever. I think you get the idea. Gretchen Rubin, who is an author dealing with human behaviors, she calls it pairing. And James Clear, who's the author of the book Atomic Habits, that's another one worth getting and reading and listening to. He calls it habit stacking. But the point is that you take something that already exists that you are doing as a regular habit, and you say, when I do X, I will do Y. I will do this, I will do that. The next part about habit forming is take baby steps. The danger of relying on motivation alone to form a new habit is that you don't have a backup plan for when you're not in the mood. Really, the only way to make a habit stick is to turn it into an automatic behavior. Because if it's always going to be a random thing that you randomly do, random is not a day of the week, and it's not an hour on the calendar. It's not going to happen. So you want to make it stick by starting it small enough that you can say, I'm going to commit to that. So a micro commitment is what you're making at the very beginning, and it's going to grow. But an example of a micro commitment would be, I'm going to walk for 5 minutes. I can do that. I'm going to walk for 5 minutes. I'm going to write just one paragraph of the book I've been wanting to write. I'll just write one paragraph. Eating 1 serving of vegetables more every day than you were doing before, okay? That's a small thing, and it's doable. And again, your brain's not going to say, whoa, this is too much. I don't like it. So, do those things. Now, the key to habit developing in making the micro commitments is to also focus on those small wins, right? Every time you succeed, even though it's ridiculous, it's going to reinforce that. And if you're doing something that is kind of impossible to fail, you think, why would I celebrate that? Here's the thing. Seems very simplistic, but it's powerful and it works. So do the little thing and celebrate, I did it, which is far more than not doing it, right? So when you do that, then you can celebrate that you've done it. Now, here's a really, really important thing, and this is the sabotage that so many people end up facing. They don't make a backup plan for when something goes wrong. So you need to make a plan for the obstacles. And guess what? Every new habit is going to have those obstacles. A large portion of people will start out with the best intentions, and then something derails them. What might derail them? Time, right? Pain, the weather, space, costs, family things coming up, your self-consciousness, whatever the thing is that's going to hit your new habit, you want to consider, well, if this happens, then what will I do? If you prepare and anticipate some common obstacles that might come, you won't be blindsided by them, and it won't completely wipe you out. And this is called the if-then planning. So if I check the weather and it's raining, instead of jogging outside, I'm going to go to the gym. If you thought about that ahead of time, your brain isn't going to go, yay, day off. No, you're going to say, I can still keep this habit, and this is how I'm going to do it. Another example, if I don't have time for my project by the end of the day, I will get up 30 minutes earlier and put that time in on that project before I start the next day's plans. So when we think about the obstacles that are going to hit us, we can overcome even the sideline sabotages. And as you go along, something will come up that you haven't thought about. It's okay. Take the time right then and say, okay, how else can I be able to check this habit off on my list at the end of today? And process through it. And again, you're going to build experience while that habit is being built. And you're going to look back and go, wow, that really worked. Now, we talked about this concept when we were talking earlier about procrastination, and that is to create accountability for your habit. There's got to be something, and they certainly have done studies that you're more likely to follow through if you have a buddy, if you have an accountability partner, if you have some deadline that you're meeting. So you can share updates with your friends. You can use habit tracking apps. For some reason, a simple little chart where you write down your habit, and then you've got 30 days, and you get to check that off, and check that off, and check that off. It's remarkable because there's a reward. You're seeing it fill up. You're not getting foggy in your brain and saying, did I do that? Did I not do that? It's just right there, and it's your friend, and you get to check it off. So create accountability for your habit. If you are an obliger, and we'll be talking about that in a bit, you're going to want somebody that holds that accountability to you. But some people can just simply get a task app and that's enough. Or they write the to-do list and they get to check it off. Some people get overwhelmed by a to-do list. So figure out what's the thing that you like and give it a try. It's an experiment. It's not a failure. It's an experiment. If something didn't really work for you, say, okay, what's another way I might be able to do this? If you tell everybody, hey, I'm going to do this, well, you might get it done, right? That's just one little thing that you can do. Now, you don't want to underestimate that accountability. I remember when I was really struggling with too much on my plate, I knew that I needed an accountability partner to tackle a new project. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to just deal with one more person. And you know what that told me? That told me that I had too many things on my plate and probably things that weren't mine. So go back to what we talked about in the first section of figuring out, are you holding something that's not yours? You're not going to do that thing. Figure out what you can delegate. As I have coached people who are obligers, people who have a hard time saying no, I have said to them the 4 Ds. Number 1, decline. Number 2, delegate. The fourth one is delay, right? Schedule it for an appropriate time so you don't knock something else off. And the last one is do it. If you've got to do it, do it. But if you haven't done the decline, the delegate, or the delay, don't do it. There's several more yeses in front of that last thing that you just got asked. So you want to make plans for the obstacles, and you want to be able to not have your plate so full. So if you're feeling like, I don't want an accountability partner, you've got some house cleaning to do. And then you can say, okay, I'm ready for this, and I'm going to do this now. And then you can take that on, and you will not be so terribly overwhelmed. Now, according to a personality framework that was created by Gretchen Rubin, some of you may have heard of the 4 tendencies. You might have heard of her other books, Better Than Before or The Happiness Project. She has been able to see that obligers have to meet expectations with accountability. And I am going to be talking about that a little bit more in just a bit. But I want to finish our 8 steps first. So you want to reward those important milestones. This is similar with the procrastination. Again, you want to reward, but keep in mind, if you're trying to do an exercise habit, probably don't reward yourself with food, but you could reward yourself with a new outfit, right, as your body's changing. So make the reward appropriate to what's going on. And we can sometimes underestimate the importance of having fun while we're learning these new things, but it really does help. So if something is, I don't want to do this, you're not going to succeed at that. And so your first work is to figure out, how can you make this something that's enjoyable? Whether it's the buddy system, whether it's new running shoes, whether it's a better tool in the kitchen, whatever. Think through those things. Now, the final step in the new habit forming is to build a new identity. And you might think, what do you mean by that? If you're just doing something that's outside of who you are, you're not going to continue to do it forever, right? You can do a lot of committing and you can get some small actions, but then you're like, oh, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Here's an example. If somebody is trying to quit smoking and somebody offers them to have a cigarette, they're going to say, no, thanks, I'm trying to quit. What was their identity? Their identity was still they were a smoker, but they were passing that action for that moment. But if they say, no, thanks, I'm a non-smoker, that triggers the brain in saying, oh, I don't do that anymore. Right? And it really helps. So you want to begin to think about that new identity. If you're trying to become vegetarian because your doctor has said your heart disease is going to kill you, you have to do surgery, you need to consider that vegetarian diet, you can start saying, I'm a vegetarian. You might be in the beginning process, but you can say, this is where I'm going. That's your identity. And that will make a lot of progress for the habits that you're trying to own. That's what makes it your own, instead of just something you're checking off of a list because it was a good idea, right? So you want to do that. Now, on the bottom of your handout is a little graphic, and it's called the 4 Laws for Building or Breaking Habits. In your handout, you'll be able to identify. It's this one that has this little circle here. And what this does, we'll show it one more time so that the people can see for sure what they've got. Right there. There you go. So you can see in this little handout here, 4 laws for building or breaking habits. So take a look at that and listen what I'm saying, follow along, and I'll explain what this means. Okay. So the 4 laws of the habit forming is you get a cue, you get a craving, then you reward because you've followed that action after you have had that response. So it's cue number 1, craving number 2, response number 3, and then reward, right? The pleasure center of your brain just was like, that cookie was so fabulous, even though I wasn't going to eat cookies anymore. So we'll talk about the cue. When you're building a good habit, what you're wanting to do, you need to make it obvious. Make the cue obvious. If you want to eat more vegetables or more produce, you need to put a fruit bowl on your counter instead of a cookie jar. So to break the bad habit, it's the opposite. Make it invisible. So whatever cues you to the habit you want it to be obvious. You're not going to miss it. And the thing you don't want to do anymore, you want to make it invisible. Maybe that means that you completely remove it out of your house. If you can't do that because you're not the only one in your home, get it out of your sight. The second thing is to make it attractive. And we already touched on this a little bit. But if you want to enjoy the fruit, but you don't really like a nasty old thing from the store, maybe get fresh. Maybe make a fruit salad and put a little bit of coconut cream on it, right? Make it attractive. And as far as the bad habit, find ways to make them unattractive. It's like, oh, I'm not going to grab that, whatever it is, because I have to go out to the garage and dig it out of a box or something like that, right? So make the effort to get it unattractive. That goes with the third one in making it easy or making it hard. If you want to do something, the easier it is, the more likely you're going to do it. If the fruit is right there, then you're going to get it. But if the cookie's right there, you're going to get it. So you need to make it hard. If you have to get in your car, start your car, back out, get into the traffic, go to the store and get the cookie, you're not so likely to get it. Just eat the piece of fruit and move on, right? You'll be on to the next thing before you even get to the store. And then the fourth thing is to make it satisfying, which is kind of what I was saying before. If you're not really liking the flavor of fruit, but you want all of the nutrients that it's going to give you, find ways that you do like to prepare it and enjoy it. And with the bad habit, make it unsatisfying. An example, you eat that cookie, and at first your pleasure center is happy, but now you don't feel so good. That is unsatisfying. And when you acknowledge what's satisfying versus unsatisfying, that will help you with your habit forming, okay? So as you can see, it's not that hard to form a new habit. The secret is to relate that important goal and make that commitment. Consistency is the key for keeping you going on that new habit. And the other thing is make it small it's more manageable, you're less likely to fail, and then you can get that habit working. So in your handout, you've got not only the sheet I was just talking about for forming the new habits, but you also have a resource page that's in your handout. And in there is a heading for procrastination, which has all the books I talked about in the earlier section. And there's also an article about why procrastination is about managing emotions and not time. There's a quiz to find out what tendency you are, which I'm going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. And there's also the other links I was talking about. But back to the habits, in the habit forming on that little handout sheet, it's just a half a sheet in your handout packet. So once you find a sheet that's just a half, that's, you know you have it. You only have one page that's a half a sheet. But there's a link in there for an article, 18 Tricks to Make New Habits Stick. So that gives you a lot more ideas on how to incorporate some of the things that we've been talking about. The last thing that you have in your handout packet is what's called a nutshell guide. And you'll see that it's got some little colored boxes on there. There's several pages to that. There you go. You can see that there, okay? This is from Gretchen Rubin. It is in reference to her book, The 4 Tendencies. I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights here so that you understand the framework. Many of us like little personality quizzes. Oh, what personality are you? And this and that. The 4 Tendencies overlays every type of personality. And here's the reason why. It has everything to do with how you meet expectations. Inner expectations, the things you do for yourself, and outer expectations, whether that's from your boss or your family or anything like that. So there are 4 different tendencies. There's the upholder, there is the questioner, the obliger, and the rebel. And you might think, oh, I'm a rebel. Well, a rebel's not necessarily a bad thing, and I'll explain why that is in just a moment. The upholder has a motto that says, rules are my freedom. If they know what's expected of them, they're going to do it, they're good to go. But I will tell you that there's not very many in the population that are upholders, even though we might think we are. Questioners, their motto is, I will comply if you convince me why. Now, in a job setting, if you have an employee that's a questioner, you are at your wit's end thinking that you're being challenged, that your authority is being challenged. But what it is people who are questioners, they need to understand what is being asked of them, and then they can do it. They're not going to do things arbitrarily, so there's got to be a reason. Now, the obligers, they just need accountability, and their motto is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me, because with a deadline, they get things done. Now, the rebels, their motto is, you can't make me, and neither can I. And you think, well, that's pretty funny. But the thing is, a rebel, what is important to them is integrity and authenticity. They're not going to do something just because somebody else said to do it. So if a rebel's procrastinating, it's not because someone put something on their list. They're not going to take it on their list. But the rebels also think outside of the box. Those are the people that you want in research and development at your company, not at the cashier's stand, okay? So now you're thinking, well, what does that have to do with meeting expectations? The upholder is going to meet inner expectations and outer expectations. If they make a New Year's resolution, they're just simply going to keep that resolution. If somebody says, can you do this for me? This is how I want it done. They're going to do that. The questioner is only going to meet inner expectations, but an outer expectation can become an inner once they understand what it is that is being done and it makes sense to them, okay? The obliger meets all of the external expectations. They will do for everybody else before they will do their New Year's resolution. Typically, obligers are like, okay, I'm just not going to write resolutions anymore because I never get to finish them. And that's kind of what happens. Now, the rebels, they will only meet that inner expectation as well because it's got to be authentic to them. It might seem like they're not meeting any expectation, and that's not exactly true. Now, I cannot cover everything that's in this handout, but there's enough information for you in there to have a better understanding about the 4 tendencies. And once you figure out, oh, I'm an obliger. I am an obliger that leans towards questioner. I need the accountability if I'm going to get something done. I need that deadline. And then I can look like an upholder. But once you understand what your tendency is, then you can see where you're going to thrive, right? If you are an obliger, having other people say, hey, we're going to do this, you're totally fine there. But if you're a questioner, you're going to say, well, why are we going to do that? And it's not that you're being disrespectful to authority, it's that you need to understand the reason why. So if you're going to start a new habit, do your research. You need to know why it makes sense to do things in a certain way. And once you do that, then your habits will come a lot more easily. In your resource page, I have given you a link to go take the quiz. It's free to do it. So go find out what is your tendency. And once you find that out, take the time and learn a little bit more about being an upholder, a questioner, an obliger, or a rebel. Because there's one thing that happens to obligers, and I think we've all seen this, especially in the work setting, and that is they have said yes so many times that they snap and everything becomes no. It's a protection mechanism. Procrastination can be a protection mechanism for us. We have to find out what's going on and why. And once we do that, then we can make more progress and get through the struggling issues. So I just really encourage you, when we're dealing with the brain, when we're dealing with procrastination and habits, there's a tremendous amount of resources available. And I hope that we've given you enough that you can not procrastinate, but say, hey, I'm going to do 5% and I'm going to look over these handouts and I'm going to start doing something because it's going to open up a whole new world for you. So if you have questions, you need to start thinking of them and forming them right now. And if you need to register because you don't have these handouts, it's not too late to do it. Go ahead and do it. We'll get you the handouts from today as well as you being able to get the future handouts.
Did you learn something new? I hope you did learn something new. I learned some new things myself about forming new habits. Of course, if you have any questions, you can still send those in. And while you're sending in your questions, if we have any questions, do we have any questions? We do. We're going to get to those in a minute. Okay. So keep sending them in. I will tell you about are we going to do a final segment? Do we have a final segment? So I should mention that if you pre-registered, the habit-forming handout was in your confirmation email. And if you did not pre-register, I think that's where I want to be. Yes. Yeah, I guess I could mention the next event is on stress. I think that probably concludes. I have a question. If I can, and I think we also have some questions. I think we're ready for some questions. Maybe I should just mention it one more time. Steps2Health, Chewelah@gmail.com. That's where you can send your questions. And we'll try to get back to you even if you don't have those in before the program is over. So our first question from the audience is, and maybe I should just do it like this.
That's great.
What if the habit you don't want to continue is something you definitely enjoy?
Yes, that can be a really tricky thing. So with the 4 laws, if you make it to where it's not obvious to trigger you to, oh, I see that, I want to do it. So take away the obviousness, make it harder to do, make it less enjoyable. Those are all those things. But I'll tell you honestly, one of the things that I do when I have a habit that I would like to keep but I know is detrimental, I pray and I ask the Lord who created me to change my thinking and my heart on the thing. And often I am amazed at what my Creator can do. He can take away that desire and He can help me to see better why that's destruction for me. The Lord loves us and He wants to help us with these difficult things. The scripture says, can a leopard change his spots? Well, neither can a man who's accustomed to doing evil. But with the Lord's help, we can definitely be able to let go of those things that we want. Someone once said to me that being a Christian isn't that you stop doing all those things that you like. Being a Christian is being transformed to where you no longer like the destructive things and you like the good things.
Amen.
Any other questions?
I actually have a question.
Okay.
I don't think we have any new ones.
All right.
What's the most common hindrance to good habit forming?
The most common. Well, that is a big question because it depends on the individual. What is getting in the way of them being able to form the habit? For an obliger, the biggest hindrance is not having accountability and they're doing everybody else's things. Another one, if they're the questioner, they're not going to be able to do that habit if it seems arbitrary to them. That is a really good question, but the answer isn't the same for every single person. And so you need to put the work in of self-discovery and figure out what is it that's getting in your way. Because once you do that, figuring out the solution becomes a whole lot easier.
I actually have another question, if I may ask.
Okay.
I know sometimes the audience can't form their questions fast enough, or they've taken in a lot of information, and so that can make it to where they just don't have an answer right now. But what do you do? What's one of the methods you use to help? And I know you explained some of this already.
Sure.
But just right off the cuff, what are some of the things that you like to do to form new habits?
Okay, so I already admitted that I was once a master procrastinator and that I'm a high achiever and I have too much on my plate. But when I want to form a new habit, I try to find the accountability, whether it's in a friend or if it's in a habit tracker or something like that. So for me personally, okay, I want to be able to do something new. I'm going to find a way to have that accountability for that new thing. I've got my schedules. I figure out where it belongs on the schedule. But guess what? I'm my worst schedule enforcer, right? I'm like, I can skip that. Why? Because it didn't have a deadline. So for me, I need those deadlines. And sometimes I have to review everything I have stacked up, and I have to say, is this realistic? Do I have too many things going on? And that's often the case when I find out I'm having a difficulty with a new habit. When I see my habit tracker and I have not done the thing I wanted to do every day, I have to step back and say, what's getting in my way? If I want to get up at 5 a.m. every morning and I only did it once during the week, I have to go back and figure out why I'm not pulling that off. So again, if you want to make changes, you're going to have to put in a little bit of work. But for me, accountability at the end of the day equals a complete checklist.
You know, I'm thinking of some people that have asked me about habit forming or trying to quit bad habits. If I can ask you one more question.
Okay.
Okay. So what do you see in individuals that sabotages quality habits?
I see those 10 things that I covered during the earlier program on what's behind your procrastination. So again, for me personally, if I don't have an accountability system, that's going to get sabotaged. But what do I see the most? I will tell you, obligers are 42% of the population, so I probably see accountability more than anything else. But the other thing that I see sabotaging new habits is that people haven't thought through how it's going to look, what's going to make it work, what are the small steps, how do I make this easier, and where does it fit in my life? Again, if it's random, random's not a day of the week, and it's not an hour on the calendar. We're done.
Okay, well, I think that concludes our time today.
Great.
Why don't we close with prayer? Father, I want to thank you for the opportunity you've given us today to challenge ourselves to better order our lives, to form better habits. We know that you want us to do that for our families, our churches, and of course our community. And so I ask that your blessing would be upon the viewers and even us here that were a part of this program to really be improved for your purposes and your glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you for joining us.